ocean.
Yeah. Now, there are some notable changes to our entry plans for this flight, and they will intentionally push the ship to and very likely beyond its limits. This includes several thermal protection upgrades and operational changes as we prepare for future ship catch and reuse. Today's flight test will also test new secondary thermal protection materials, and entire sections of the heat shield has actually been removed in certain areas. And on top of all of that, we're going to fly the ship at an aggressive angle of attack once it's moving slower than the speed of sound.
Now this means we'll be flying nose down instead of our usual belly flap orientation during final descent. This will no doubt stress the limits of the flap's ability to maintain control, but it will be a chance to get real flight data on what our limits actually are.
So, to put it as bluntly as possible, do not be surprised if this is not a smooth flight to splashdown today. We are intentionally looking for how far we can push and discover the vehicle's true limits as we plan for future ship return and catch.
And even though ship recovery is not expected today, the telemetry and data we receive all the way to the end is what we're looking for and what will help us get to a rapidly reusable Starship of the future.
Now, just like Flight 5, one of our objectives for Flight 6 is attempting to return the booster to the launch site to be caught by the tower. The booster for this flight has upgrades to add redundancy across its propulsion system, increase the structural, as well as increasing the structural strength in a few spots. We've also implemented a few changes across both ship and tower to try and speed up the post-catch timeline. Returning vehicles to the launch site leverages the same hardware that we use for stacking ahead of flight, making our infrastructure multi-purpose. And in order for us to achieve that rapid reusability that we keep talking about, we need a quick turnaround. And you can't get much faster than returning the launch vehicle right back there to where it needs to launch from again.
Exactly. In this video, you can see our original render of booster catch alongside the actual footage of catch from Flight 5. This video is just mind-blowing to see the predicted versus reality. And just like the last flight for today's booster catch, there are thousands of criteria that need to be met in order to proceed with catch. Automated checks have to indicate we have a healthy booster and a healthy tower, and the flight director must issue a manual command which is informed by manual checks from the flight control team. If this command is not sent prior to the completion of the boost back burn, or if automated health checks show unacceptable conditions with Super Heavy or the tower, the booster will default to a trajectory that takes it to a landing burn and soft splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico.
I remember when we first heard the call out that tower was go for catch on Flight 5, and wow, I still get goosebumps when I think about that moment. Now, for today's test, just like Flight 5, we're only going to catch if everything on the booster and the tower checks out after launch. As always, we accept no compromises when it comes to the safety of the public and our team. And so to that end, the area around the pad and the flight path are cleared in advance.
A lot of things have to go right in order to line up the booster catch. So if all criteria is met, we will attempt the catch, but there is a chance that we may not. Either way, we'll be getting tons of in-flight data, which is extremely valuable.
Exactly. That first catch was pretty epic, though. So, like you, we'll be keeping our hopes high to see another one this afternoon. Now, Dan, you got to see it in person last time. Are you mentally prepared for a possible round two?
I mean, probably not. That was pretty hands down the coolest thing I've ever seen. And the fact that we're going to do that every time now breaks my brain a little bit, but it was absolutely incredible. One of the unique aspects with Super Heavy coming back is it does generate a sonic boom. This is something commonly associated with reusable spacecraft. It's coming in faster than the speed of sound and then slowing down. It creates that pressure wave that builds up, and then when it reaches you on the ground, that rapid change in pressure is that quick thunderclap sound that you hear. Now, generally, the only effect is that thunderclap sound, but if you're not expecting it, it's definitely going to get your attention, and we were able to hear it last time. The impact of, or how loud it is, changes pretty dramatically. And in this video, you can see as we were descending, and there was kind of that quick triple pop that you heard. Now, that was picked up from closer to the pad. Most people at our distance and further away, you're only going to hear one or two as they're happening kind of so on top of each other that it might just sound like one big bang. But as I said, that's something that's only associated with spacecraft being reused. We hear it with Falcon 9. We heard it during Shuttle, and looking forward to hopefully hearing it today. Just a quick status check, though. We're about 85% full on ship, almost 2/3 of the way full on booster, continuing to count down about 13 and a half minutes, a little under that, until we lift off today. But still looking good. I'll check back in with you guys in a few minutes. Back over to Jesse and Kate.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I think Dan said it really well when it really does hurt the brain to think that this is going to be the norm, that this is just the beginning. Every one of these flights is a step closer to a fully operational Starship that will take us beyond Earth orbit. And with our pace of rapid iteration here, the Moon and Mars are not nearly as far in the future as you may think. In fact, we're planning to send Starships to Mars as soon as 2026.
Which is when the next Mars transfer window opens, which is under 2 years from now. Now, you might be familiar with the Starlink logo, which you see there on your screen. It's an iconic representation of the Mars transfer orbit, also called the home and transfer orbit. This transfer window, or the time between the time when Earth and Mars are closest to each other, opens every 26 months and is only open for about 2 to 3 months at a time for a vehicle with Starship's power.
Lining up a launch to Mars is similar to how we launched to the International Space Station, where we timed the launches to match the station's orbit. If we didn't do this, we would need more propellant and more time to get there.
So the first opportunity we have to fly Starships to Mars, we plan to go for it. These first flight tests to Mars will be uncrewed and will test the reliability of landing in tech. If those landings go well, the first crewed flights will soon follow after that.
Right now, our flight tests are focused on proving out reusability of both Super Heavy and Starship. In 2025, we'll continue that focus while also potentially flying our first Starlink missions and demonstrate capabilities central to our role in taking astronauts to the moon as part of NASA's Artemis program. Starship will be used to land astronauts on the lunar surface on NASA's Artemis 3 mission, which will put the first humans on the moon since 1972.
One key capability will be the ability to refuel Starship on orbit, which you can see there on your screen, with a Starship prop tanker docked with a fuel depot. Next year, we're planning to test this capability by launching 2 Starships and having them meet up to transfer tons of cryogenic propellants. Now, when the time comes to land on the moon, Starship will link up with NASA's Orion spacecraft in lunar orbit, where astronauts will transfer over for their descent. Now, once on the lunar surface, they'll ride the elevator down in their Axiom EMU spacesuits from Axiom Space and leave the first footprints on the moon in more than half a century, kickstarting humanity's mission to establish a sustainable presence there. And coming soon to a moon base alpha near you, Starship Enterprise Edition.
That is so exciting, and all the advancements that are going to come in order to enable all of that. Now, our rapid iterative development approach has been the basis for all of SpaceX's major innovative advancements, including Falcon, Dragon, and Starlink. Today, we're testing hardware and systems, and we need to know how they perform under the most extreme conditions. And what's more extreme than the flight environment? We'd much rather find the bugs and limits now during testing than later on when there's more on the line.
And to reiterate, while we do determine an acceptable level of technical risk on our vehicle and pad to learn as fast as possible, we accept no compromises when it comes to the safety of the public or our team. So all of that to say, this is only the 6th of many future flight tests of Starship before it becomes fully operational.
And we tend to do our testing out in the open, just like today. And that means people sometimes see when our hardware doesn't perform as we planned during that testing. And that's okay, because this is exactly what we are testing for, to physically see if hardware performance matches what we expect it to do or not. Even more with today's test flight, where we're purposefully pushing the ship beyond its limits.
Starship development is also being aided by Starlink space-based connectivity. You might remember the Starlink panels that are incorporated into Starship, and you can see them there on your screen, those rectangular panels on Starship's